Rabbi Breitowitz says the pshat in the Gemara that people are learning Sanhedrin now. This is the way the Rambam rules, because the Rambam is the only one who wrote a real halacha book about what comes from the Gemara. Shulchan Aruch doesn't cover this. The Rambam said, "Oh, really?" People ask, that Shulchan Aruch is supposed to cover Shabbos even. How incomplete is the Shulchan Aruch? Which is not knocking on it. Shulchan Aruch is not a complete work of halacha. The laws of writing on Shabbos about the prohibition are glossed over in the Shulchan Aruch. I just give you two specific cases that don't tell you the general rule. So the Chafetz Chaim, for example, wrote in the Mishnah Berurah, it's like a whole page is just Mishnah Berurah there, or 2 pages, because the laws of writing don't feature in the Shulchan Aruch itself. I've decided to put them in myself. And other things like that. The Chafetz Chaim had to do it. Why? Because the Shulchan Aruch itself is incomplete. Aside from the fact the Shulchan Aruch doesn't even talk about many other things that have come into play. This is just one of those things. So Rabbi Breitowitz said that, pshat is the death penalty is what the Torah prescribes for non-Jewish criminals. And a lot of Jewish criminals, by the way. But the only penalty prescribed for non-Jews is the death penalty, apparently. Right? There's no lashes. There's no expiation by sacrifice for Gentiles. Right? There's no imprisonment. Okay? None of these things exist, at least in the way the sages understood the Torah. A Gentile thief is to be put to death by either a Jewish court or a Gentile court. Imagine far into the world, in New Zealand, where there are no Jews, imagine a country with no Jews. If they're trying to follow God's Torah, then their courts will punish all sorts of criminals with death. Okay? Blasphemers, thieves, murderers, kidnappers, adulterers, homosexuals. Okay? They all are to be put to death. And there's only one means of death, decapitation. Well, although I guess, like you point out in the Gemara, maybe that's a little bit subject to interpretation. But the fact that it's death. So Rabbi Breitowitz said that Rabbi Aaron Soloveitchik famously opposed the death penalty. He wrote letters to politicians when they're discussing this. I think it was in Illinois or Chicago, whatever it might be. He lived in Chicago. He gave his opinion as a Torah scholar that the Torah does not necessarily demand the death penalty for non-Jewish criminals, even murderers, but that's just the maximum penalty. Okay, but imprisonment or whatever it is, those are also valid. So that's the first issue. Rabbi Aaron Soloveitchik actually felt that way. Okay? And it's a well-known thing. You could actually find his letters are available online. Rabbi Feldman was writing about that oft-cited classic and counterintuitive halacha that a unanimous verdict to convict in a capital case in a Sanhedrin is overturned. Okay? He's acquitted for that. You're aware of this. He said it was Antonin Scalia's favorite Talmudic teaching. He used to give shiurim about this. Okay, you've been to some of his shiurim, right? Which Supreme Court justice did you hear from? Yeah, Scalia's shiurim. Okay, so the pashtus is, and I'm glad that Rabbi Feldman mentioned this, is that in the Maimonidean formulation, the reason for this is not the Rambam says they all vote to convict, but they just begin like that's the first right off the bat. They're all ready to convict. Paschu, okay? It means that this shows that no one ever argued the other side to acquit. He didn't even have anybody advocating for him, because in a capital case in front of a Sanhedrin, there's no prosecutor and there's no there is no defendant. There are no lawyers. There's no advocates. It's just the judges and witnesses. So the witnesses, the defendant advocates for himself, but get an advocate on the court. He doesn't get a court appointed. Let's say nowadays for Batei Din you could pay for a to'ayin. A to'ayin is an advocate, person to lay your claims for you and advise you. Okay, so it's interesting. Helped. I showed people a few things. Oh, you have to go to Beis Din, this and that. So here's what you should know. Here's some Choshen Mishpat things you should be aware of. Okay, I've never toined in front of Beis Din for others, although I have represented myself in Beis Din and in court here in Israel a few times. It's easier than in America. You don't have to be a lawyer to do it, and you could actually win. In America, you have no chance if you're not a professional. But here in Israel, it's possible. I learned this also. I learned this from my wife's uncle. He told me, you'll be okay. You could speak eloquently. You have proof to your position. You know the precedent, so you could actually win. Yeah, it's interesting. Okay, so he mentioned this. Like I said, the Maimonidean understanding is that the other side wasn't really thought of. It was too biased to begin with. Not that somehow there was a case and they really deliberated for a while and then they came to this. That's not what it means. But on the esoteric level, unanimous to convict. So he is acquitted in this capital case. It shows that for something to be abundantly clear, for something to be really unanimous, you need at least one significant sage worthy of being in the Sanhedrin to disagree. Okay? If you're going to convict the most obvious killer, you need at least one out of 71 great scholars of the generation to say he's not guilty. So too, in order for me to really believe that even today the Torah scholars say that the death penalty is the only option available for criminals, you need someone who's worthy of sitting on Sanhedrin to make a good but unfortunately rejected argument against. Okay, if Rabbi Art Soloveitchik wasn't there telling us that no, the death penalty is not what the Torah wants. Okay, and he also wrote, yes, I'm 100% certain this is what the Torah wants, and I can't find anybody to disagree. It means maybe we are, guilty of groupthink, or we're actually not thinking right. The fact that there is someone else in this world who actually thought otherwise shows you that it's correct. Every now and then, the scholars here, there's a certain halacha. It should be everybody understands this, and Ibn Ezra goes against everybody. He has a different shot altogether in this. Like I think it's Shifra Harufa, right? I think it could be. There's in Gemara they're trying to discuss what a Shifra Harufa is. Ibn Ezra argues according to Pshat against what the Talmudic definition is. There's a halachic terminology, Shifra Harufa, if you've heard of her. Okay, we were studying that today, so that's why I came on. If there hadn't been the one person disagreeing, the one person worth his salt disagreeing, then maybe we should actually worry. But the fact is, even the most clearest aspects of the halacha need someone just to say otherwise. Otherwise, you have to watch out. Unless it's halacha Moshe Sinai. But either way, that's why I'm glad he wrote it. Okay, the fact that Rabbi Aaron Soloveitchik argued that the death penalty is not necessarily what the Torah wants, it actually strengthens our conviction that it is what the Torah wants. No, Bradus was the one who brought this up. He was the one answering the question of the students in the yeshiva, and he said, in Pashtus, the death penalty is what the Torah prescribes. It's just that, unfortunately, he believed that it's not right. I can understand that there are arguments that perhaps the death penalty, people say eventually comes out that the court put the wrong man to death. You know that? There are cases like that in America. Or they had someone on death row, but he was cleared by technology, DNA evidence. And Oigavalt, we nearly put him to death. My answer to all those cases, which is the minimum should be minimum. In places like Texas, a lot of these murderers are actually, they do come to confess before they're put to death, which the Torah says, by the way, the Beis Din tells the Jewish guy, for example, before he's put to death, confess. Just like Yeshua told Achan to confess before he died, it would help. As for the people who, chas v'shalom, innocent men, or people who should not be being put to death, who are put to death by secular courts, I would imagine that perhaps they didn't receive a fair trial. The question is not the death penalty in that case. It's that how come they railroaded a person, or perhaps there was some sort of corruption. A lot of prosecutors, a lot of times, their job is to prosecute, but sometimes they don't even listen to their conscience, if they have any, and know that, maybe they're hiding evidence. Maybe it's not the truth, and that's a problem. Okay? So the problem is not the death penalty per se. It's which would be that'd be the sentence. The problem is the verdict, the process leading to the verdict. Yeah, yes, and the miscarriage. On the flip side, the miscarriage of the justice.